Good evening. Today is Monday, July 13th, and this is the Cabarrus County Board of Education work session and our business meeting. I'd like to call this meeting to order. To begin with, I have something rather sad to go through, and we'd like to take a moment of silence. We lost an employee and several of our students over the past month, and I just want y'all to take some time to pray for the families and think about the loss that's been experienced and ask for some healing that goes there. We're having a moment of silence for Mr. Bobby Lands, Miss Haley Allen, Master Brylan Coward, and Miss Cheyenne Marshall. So if you will, join me, and I'll read a little bit about them after we finish our moment of silence. Amen. Let me just tell you about who we were having a silence for. Mr. Bobby Lands was a bus driver at Bethel Elementary School, and he passed away on June the 8th. Ms. Haley Allen was a 2015 graduate of Central Cabarrus High School. She passed away on June 26th in an automobile accident. Master Brylan Coward, a rising sixth grader at Concord Middle School, passed away on July the 2nd in an automobile accident. And Miss Cheyenne Marshall, a rising senior at Cox Mill High School, passed away on July the 4th in a boating accident. And our prayers and our hearts go out to the families as we remember them. All right, let's now honor our country and say the pledge. Mr. Kirk, if you'll lead us.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, board members, I'd like to set the agenda. I would be accepting motions to accept the agenda as written. All right, Tim Furr and David Harrison. All in favor of accepting the agenda as written, say aye. Aye. Oppose? A motion carries. Let's see, tonight we'll only have 5 of us, Ms. Monroe, so the motion carries 5-0. All right, recognitions. The introduction of the new teacher liaison to the board for the 2015-16. Dr. Louder, if you'll come to the podium and tell us who this is.
Good evening. On behalf of the Board of Education, I want to welcome our new teacher liaison to the board for the 2015-2016 school year. Kelly Bumgardner is the 2015-2016 Cabarrus County Schools Teacher of the Year. She's a 7th grade language arts teacher at Northwest Cabarrus Middle School, where she has taught for 8 of her 10 years. In her professional biography, Kelly explained, "The question wasn't what I wanted to be, but instead what I wanted to teach. I was the neighborhood girl who tortured my friends by playing school, and I somehow always managed to be the teacher while my friends were the students." Kelly believes that true learners become lifelong readers and that learner-centered teaching promotes learning that is collaborative and reflective. In this setting, deep and meaningful reflection will make students aware of their own learning and encourage further development of learning skills. Kelly believes that demonstrating her curiosity and passion about her subject sets the tone for learning in the classroom. So we want to welcome Kelly and say thank you for agreeing to serve on our school board for the 2015-2016 school year. We know you'll do a great job, so thank you.
And Kelly, if you ever have an opportunity to want to say something, please let us know, because we would love to hear your input as we go forward. And don't be hesitant to talk, because we're just all people up here. Thank you. All right. Now we go to the minutes, and we had 3 sets of minutes that we needed to approve. Are there any changes to any of the minutes? Because we could approve them all at one time if everyone so desires. Hearing no objections, let's go ahead. I have a motion to approve all 3 sets of minutes. David
Second.
Harrison, and Jeff Phillips. All right, all in favor of approving the minutes as written for June 1st, June 8th, and June 25th, say aye. Aye. Oppose? That motion carries 5-0. All right, let's move on to the board chair comments, and I will pass on to Dr. Louder.
Okay, if I could, for my comments, just highlight, we got a statistic since we've gotten out of school, which is a very important statistic and great news for our school district. The way that the state measures growth, teacher growth in North Carolina, that they've done for the last couple years is on a lagging indicator, so it actually is always 1 year behind. So we were just notified about the 2013-2014 school year and what that means. So I just want to emphasize that for the 2013 school year, our teachers, and this is the way the state measures whether or not our teachers meet their goals or exceed their goals, and this is with growth. Okay, so to say this is what students should learn in a year, that's meeting their goals, and if they exceed that, they exceed it. In 2013, the first year that was measured, 90.2% of our teachers met or exceeded their growth targets by the way that North Carolina measures that. That was number 1 in the region and 6th overall in the state of North Carolina. For the new year that was just released, which is 2014, for the second year in a row, Cabarrus County teachers remain number 1 in our region with 90.8% of the teachers meeting or exceeding their growth targets. This is 11th in the state, and again, number 1 in our region, and number 1 for school systems that are larger than 15,000 students. So we're the 10th biggest school district in North Carolina. We have about double that, but for all the systems that have 15,000 or more students, we were first for teachers exceeding their growth. So we're obviously very proud of our teachers with this. When we look at what we want to measure and what we want to emphasize as educators, it's growing our students and moving them from one point to another. So great statistic for 2 years in a row, and a great testament to our teachers and administrators that they are working hard, doing a great job, and focused on the right things. So we just want to make sure we emphasize that and say congratulations to our schools for doing a great job for 2 years in a row.
Thank you, Dr. Louder. All right, let's move on to our next is guest speakers to address the board. Did we have any cards, Ms. Monroe? All right, well, we do have an open policy on guest speakers, so that all you have to do is sign up with your name and address, fill out a card, and then we'll allow you at each business meeting to present in accordance with Board Policy 2310 that was revised by the board on May 11th. A part of each business meeting will be set aside for citizens to address the board. Sign-up cards will be available for any individual or group to indicate their desire to address the board. Speakers must hand a completed card to the board clerk no later than 6 p.m., the normal start time of the regularly scheduled monthly meeting. Board chair will decide the time devoted to public comment. Speakers must complete a contact information card including their name, group name, address, phone number, and list the general education related topic of their presentation to the board for minutes. So in the future, if any of you wish to address the board, you don't have to do it on the Friday before the board meeting. Now you get to come here as late as 6 p.m. and fill out a card. So moving on, we'll go to the consent agenda. And do I have a motion to approve the items on the consent agenda?
So moved.
Mr. Walter, Dr. Phillips. All in favor of approving the consent agenda, say aye. Aye. Oppose? Okay, that motion carries, so the consent agenda as written is approved. Now let's move on to the approval of school fees. Ms. Kelly Klutz, would you come on down and give us the right price?
I'll try. Good evening.
Or maybe it's the wrong price.
I hope it's the right price. Every year that we change the fees, the board has to adopt the fee list, and so we presented that information to you. We presented previous years and current year as requested. There are 4 changes noted from last year to this year. 3 of them are directly related to specific programming needs, and you can see that on the explanation. And in addition, we've had a driver's ed fee but we're recommending to go ahead and raise it to the highest allowable fee, $65 versus what we're currently charging is $55 because of the questionable state budgets as related. We feel like it'll have to go to the max anyway, whatever that ends up being or what the state deems appropriate for us. So those are the changes. If you have questions or concerns, I'll take those now.
All right, board members, Mr. Walter, I see you want to.
Just go over the new fees, what they are again.
The new fees, so the first change is the driver's ed change from 55 to 65. The new fees are a technology use fee, and that's for J&Frees only, and it's for the general use and upkeep of the Chromebooks and the computer case.
Now, these are Chromebooks they take home, is that why we're,
Only at J&Frees now, of the STEM side.
so those folks will be paying a fee for the take home?
Yes.
Now, do we do that at other schools? We don't do that at other schools. We do it central.
Yes, sir, we do. At the early college, there's a fee. At the STEM magnet for the iPads and the Mac Airs that they have, there's a fee also. The other schools do not take the devices home.
The next new fee is for WebAssign. It's for Concord High School only. It's for adaptive homework software used in chemistry, physics, and AP Stats. The next one is ManageBox, I assume, pronouncing that correctly. It's CHS Concord High School, and it's for IB specific planning, assessment, and reporting tool. It's annual fee for IB students.
Mr. Harrison, did you have a comment?
For a moment, can we talk about driver's education? Give or take, how many staff members do we have who are driver's education instructors? Or can you speak in terms of the budget that we have, or can you give us some background about
Closer.
driver's education, which seems to be kind of hanging in the balance in terms of Raleigh's decisions about
Sure.
how school districts across the state will go forward?
Right. The budget for driver's education is approximately $500,000. The way that we get our drivers is that they're generally teachers or staff members that have full-time employment, and then we pay them a lesser rate to do the driving, in the evenings, in the summer, on weekends, that kind of thing. So it keeps the cost low. We're already paying these people for health insurance and FICA and retirement and those types of things. So if we were to employ full-time people specifically for that purpose, then there's another $5,400 a year that would increase that cost, that labor cost significantly. So it's the number, because they're just additional employment for staff. I don't have that one, but I certainly could get that for you. I'm not sure how many it would make up in full-time equivalents, but most of that budget, that $500,000 budget, is our salary, paying the salaries and paying the fuel for the cars.
And how are the cars, how are the vehicles either funded or owned or maintained? Does that $500,000 include the maintenance on those vehicles?
It can include the maintenance on those vehicles if you have enough money in that $500,000 to run the program. And some years we do, and some years we don't. And it just, we just kind of have to monitor it year by year. With this past year and being able to collect the fee, we probably would have been able to buy a couple of vehicles at the end of the year. We wait till the end of the year to see if there's any additional money to buy some vehicles. There was money available at the end of the year to buy vehicles, but because we didn't know if the state was going to continue to have a program, it didn't make any sense for us to buy vehicles in June and then the state cancel the program in July. So we have those dollars still stashed away, and that's what we're paying for driver's education right now with, is those, whereas some LEAs have had to cancel driver's education because there's no funding. We are able to continue it. Hopefully the state will give us a decision and we can make better decisions after that time for the remainder of the year.
Well, my experience with you is that you are not a speculative person, so I'll speculate in only for myself, not for you. It appears to me that the state is either playing cat and mouse with driver's education funding and to the detriment of parents' pocketbooks and the costs that they will pay for their child to receive adequate training to handle a 2,000-pound tank in some cases, and making our roads safe or safer or not. And it seems that the state is possibly venturing into outsourcing and divesting itself of driver's education statewide. I don't think those are great decisions. I would like our students to be able to be competent and capable on the roads for all of us. But I suppose we don't have any additional information or insight as to what the state is doing at this moment.
At this moment, that's all I have, what I've reported to you.
But it is possible that they would cancel it cold turkey and or phase it out. Do we have any insight?
Anything is possible. I certainly hope that they would give us better notice. Well, they did give us notice a year ago, and they said that the intent was to remove it, but then we didn't have firm information. So, but even if they decide to remove it this late in the fiscal year, I would hope that they would give us some kind of time to make a concrete decision at the LEAs. The continuing resolution, I think, is interesting in that it says that we're required to offer, LEAs are required to offer it. Certainly it doesn't indicate, and Mark could elaborate on this if he'd like to, but it doesn't indicate the time in which you have to offer it. It just says you need to offer it. So I think some LEAs are waiting till after a decision has been made, and then they're making their decision on the time in which that they're going to offer it. That would put our LEA and our system and our parents in a real mess. We would be behind. We think because we have the funding available that we should service our students the best and the parents the best that we can at this point and make a decision when the state makes their decision.
And I'll trust that we have a contingency plan in place to more or less go up to the county to ask for their assistance in making this adjustment.
We have had those discussions with the county.
Okay,
Yes.
so we're moving along in that process. Thank you.
So just to clarify, I think you've told us in the past how much it costs per student to actually deliver driver's ed. Do you remember what that number is?
Chris probably knows better than I do, actually. Isn't it 300, 330 or something like that?
Yeah, the state average is like $330, and we were like $257 per student was the average. It was somewhere in that area. I mean, it's definitely lower than the state average, but like Kelly said, there's not any fat in that program.
But in any case, with this raising the fee from $55 to $65, we are still basically subsidizing the cost by almost $200 a student. And so I think you said there's about $100,000 that we had at the end of last
That's right.
year. And so that will allow us, by my calculation, to be able to handle maybe 500 more students before that $100,000 is gone. And then we're going to be in a bad spot because we have to, if the state does not give us the money to run the program but continues to say you have to have an offer of the program, then the only thing we can do is to rob other things that we're doing to help students. So I hope the state legislature will either tell us that they're going to provide us the money to run a program that they're mandating us to do, or they take away the mandate.
Basically, the fees that we're voting on tonight will be effective as of the beginning of school.
Yes, that's correct.
So that effectivity date will be somewhere around August 24th or 21st or something like that.
I don't know that we've ever had a start date, just the fiscal year, which in my mind is July 1st through June 30th. would be the fiscal year 2015, 2016. And so the fees would apply as they're, and most of them are related to the start of school. And so,
Okay.
yeah, when school starts.
But the driver's ed $65 fee would be as of the start of school.
Well, actually, it would be when you adopt these fees, but we would, the students that have already been told that it's 55, we wouldn't go back and increase their fee. So there may be students in right now that have already paid the $55, and we wouldn't go back and ask for $10 more. We would just, all future communications would be, the fee is $65, and that's what the board has approved.
So we have a hard drop point where you won't have a blurring of fees between students before we send out the next letter to say, all right, the next letter that goes out will be, your fee will be $65.
Yes, exactly. Robert, the next communication to the schools would need, or the students would need to have this fee established in it.
Is part of the language in the different competing budgets, one of them has dropping in driver's ed completely.
Mm-hmm.
Does that allow the LEAs to continue the program at the full rate? Does it give us to where we could actually charge? Because when you think that a student gets a 20% discount on their insurance, I believe if that's not correct, someone correct me, but I thought that once you take driver's ed, you get a certain percentage off your insurance policy, and that could amount to close to the $200 and some, where it is truly a financial decision if a parent wanted to pursue that, if the state went that direction. Could you get some information on that to find out if that is truly the fact? Because
And
it
the
may,
insurance?
yeah, because we may not have to lay people off and completely just tank the program, but we may be able to offer it at the full price so that we can maintain the operating costs for the program if that need is still there, at least to provide a process of weaning us off of driver's ed.
Right. What I did see in one of the versions of the budget was that they were funding a survey or a way to go out and gather information. And one of those things that they wanted them to do was to study putting driver's ed in community colleges. So, I don't think there's a lot of ideas floating on whether we should fund it and offer it, fund it and not offer it and not fund it, send it to the community college, or do somewhere in between. But I don't think anyone's that close to a decision on which of those we're going to have.
Okay. All right, board members, our task in front of us is just to approve or disapprove this particular list that's in front of us. Do I have a motion? Mr. Furr makes the motion.
I have one comment, Kelly. Next time, since we're being presented with this and voting on it the same day, can we do this in a June meeting, or at least we can talk about it at a work session, then have a week before we vote on them for next year?
Certainly.
All right, so I had a motion by Mr. Furr. Mr. Harrison seconded it. Is there any more discussion on this issue? Seeing none, let's do our vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Oppose? Motion carries 5-0. These will be our new fees effective today. All right, let's move on to the request for naming the Mount Pleasant High School Stadium Field. Mr. Philip Furr, come on down and talk to us.
Thank you, Chairman Shoemaker. Thank you, Chairman Shoemaker, board members. I come to you tonight as the outgoing athletic director at Mount Pleasant High School. I have recently moved over to Northwest Cabarrus High School as a football coach and a social studies teacher. But I started this before I left, and I'm here to see it through tonight. I'm here tonight to ask you to put a name on the football field at Mount Pleasant High School. We would like to name that football field the Larry Honeycutt Field at Tiger Stadium. Larry Honeycutt spent 30 years as a teacher at Mount Pleasant High School, 1965 to 1995. During that 30-year career, 28 of those were spent coaching. At various times, he coached girls basketball, track, golf, baseball, and he spent 18 As the head football coach at Mount Pleasant High School. Tonight will not be honoring the wins and losses record. Tonight will be honoring 30 years of dedication to one school and being the epitome of what we look for in our athletes at Mount Pleasant. His sportsmanship, his character, his commitment to the community, his philanthropy after he left. He's been retired for 20 years this year. For 20 years, he's still been an integral part of our athletic program at Mount Pleasant. His former players still come back to see him on Friday nights. He's at our football games on Friday nights. He and his wife have done more for the children of Mount Pleasant, the needy children, than can be spoken here. The extended family, the entire extended family, has done so much for the Mount Pleasant community that when we put Larry Honeycutt's name on the football field, we're not only honoring Mr. Honeycutt, we're going to be honoring the entire family. So that is what I come to you tonight. His athletic accolades speak for themselves. He's a member of the Morris Hill College Athletic Hall of Fame. He's a Cabarrus County Hall of Fame member. Like I said, 18 years as a football coach. He's touched thousands, not only players, but all athletes as an athletic director. His dedication, the sacrifices it takes, and I full know what it takes as an athletic director, the sacrifices he made for 30 years to coach that many sports is quite a commitment to the community. And I'm here tonight to ask you to name the stadium field at Mount Pleasant High School, Larry Honeycutt Field, in honor of Coach Honeycutt.
Thank you, Mr. Furr. Do we have any comments? Mr. Tim Furr?
No,
I believe
I'm
you
just
would like
ready to make that motion.
Oh, okay. Well, this would be called the Larry Honeycutt Field at Tiger Stadium.
That is correct.
Okay.
Make my comment?
Yes, sir. Mr. Walter?
Okay, I think it's a great honor for Mr. Honeycutt. My only concern here, and it's the same concern I had prior to, is Mount Pleasant folks want a turf field. Is that, my understanding, is that still something that they'd like to have there?
I should probably let the current athletic director. We're not. Yeah, the name will not be on the field. This will be done with signage, privately funded.
Yeah, I'm just thinking if we can get community sponsorship or help at some point to develop a field, to get a turf field at Mount Pleasant, and I don't know if that hurts that or not, but I do think it's a great honor for Mr. Honeycutt so I'm supportive of that. I just don't want it to hurt any future efforts of trying to get a turf field at Mount Pleasant.
Members of the board, if I can address your question just a little bit too. My name is Chris Shin, and I'm the current athletic director. Took over for Coach Furr when he left. I was involved in the naming of the field at Concord High School last year, so kind of familiar with the process, and that's not necessarily something that is that will inhibit any sort of growth or construction there. We can do it, like he said, with signs on the scoreboard or the perimeter of the field, and you can do a very honorable and a very nice memorial and accolade for him there without inhibiting any future construction plans for the field.
All right. I heard that someone wanted to make a motion.
Anyway, I just want to let you know, to me, this is the easiest decision we'll ever make as a board. And I consider this an honor and a privilege to make the motion to name the field after Larry Honeycutt.
Thank you, Mr. Furr.
And if I may, Mr. Chair, I gather that everyone in this community should aspire to the contributions that this one individual has made and has made such a great impact on so many lives. We salute you, sir. We are grateful for your dedication. It's a high honor to know you and to know the commitment you made to Cabarrus County. Thank you.
Just turned it off. Okay, let's have any more discussion.
Just make sure when you dedicate the field that we get an invitation. I'm sure we'd like to attend.
All right, all in favor of naming the field the Larry Honeycutt Field at Tiger Stadium, say aye. Aye. Oppose? Motion carries 5-0. And please pass on to Mr. Honeycutt. He's not here, is he? I didn't think so. Please pass it on to him, how much we do appreciate all that he's done. I know that you'll do that at the time that you do the dedication, but he'll probably read about this sooner than that. So get out in front of the news, would you? Thank you. Bye-bye. All right, folks, we're going to 12.3, which is the approval of policies and policy revisions on the second reading. And Miss Lynn Reimer's not here, but Miss Sue Burns is, and
Yep,
what a
I'm
great,
here.
what a great stand-in.
We are presenting policies for approval on the second reading, 4150 student assignment and 6420 contracts with the board.
Board members, do we have any comments or questions on any of these?
This is one
Mr.
for
Walter?
This is one for Mark on the student assignment, where we have the added sentence there. Do we have to have the same provision as we have in the second section there under number 1?
Help me, Rob, where?
Page 6 of 7,
Yep,
G, paragraph 1,
okay.
about the exception for homeless students.
I got you. It's the same exception.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, that probably makes sense.
Should
To
we
just
add
have
F?
to have the
Just add
same
F to that?
parenthetical, have the same parenthetical on 3.
Okay.
I think that's a good addition. That would be if they're, I mean, that, it's unlikely to be, because we're talking about redistricting folks, which is based on an address, but I could see a situation where you had someone that had an address, got redistricted and was homeless, in which case they wouldn't have the transportation obligation. So I think it doesn't hurt to add that parenthetical, so that's a good catch.
All right. Any other comments on that particular 4150? Any comments on 6420? All right, board members, do I have a motion to approve these policies, revisions, with the one stated change that Mr. Walter requested? Mr. Harrison, Mr. Walter. All right, any more discussion? If not, all in favor of these policies, say aye. Aye. Oppose? That motion carries 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Burns. Dr. Natras is coming forward to talk to us about Title I. Tara, it's yours.
Thanks. Good evening. So as Mr. Shoemaker just said, I am here to present the Title I plan. This is an annual presentation where we review the purpose, we go through our overview for the upcoming year so that we can finalize the grant and submit it to the state for approval. So there were several steps that we've taken to get here this evening. The first was our program review. We start in January or February of the current year, so January 2015. We do a program review with principals, assistant principals, central office folks. We had parents on that committee this year where we go through what are our current practices to help us plan for 15-16. We also this year had our monitoring visit in March from the state. We have our program monitored every 4 years, and they did the monitoring for the Title I program this year, and I'm happy to say we did not have any findings for that. So had we had any, that would have obviously been an indication of things to change for 15-16, but that all went well. Thanks to Amy Violette, our Title I coordinator, who is not here, and Lynn Ellis, who helped with that a great deal. And then in June, we do an annual review with all of our Title I principals where we look at these are the current program activities, and this is what our plans are for next year. So those are all of the pieces that kind of play into the work that we're looking at for 15-16. So as you know, Title I is a funding stream that we use to supplement our programs. The key piece of Title I is that we supplement and do not supplant. So this is always in addition to. When you think about Title I funds, they should always be in addition to our local and state funds. Title I funding can be used for preschool through high school age students. And any funding that we use from Title I has to go to Title I schools. So we have to determine these are the Title I schools we're going to serve, and then we cannot use any Title I funds outside of that. There is a requirement that if we have any schools that are above 75% poverty, that we do serve those schools or show comparable local and state funding. and we serve and fund schools in rank order of poverty. So if we have a school that's a higher poverty rate than another school, they have to be served at least the same per pupil amount. And the whole premise of Title I funding is to increase student achievement for our students who are most vulnerable. So you'll see that as we go through. When you're looking at the Title I budget, the key factor before things go into schools are the set-asides. And so we first allocate a set-aside, and you have specific details on this in your executive summary, but we first set aside funds for neglected and delinquent youth. That's currently those are our students who are at the Church of God Children's Home. So we provide tutoring for them throughout the course of the school year with a couple of our teachers. We also set aside funds for parent involvement. I'll talk about that in just a minute. We have a set aside for homeless children and youth. So John Basilis gave his report back in June for the homeless subgrant. We also provide funding from the Title I grant, which provides for a lot of tutoring. We are required to provide equitable services to homeless students. We also have a set aside for our non-public schools. We do not currently use that set aside. We collaborate with them every spring, but there are not currently any children in non-public schools for whom we're using Title I funds. Administrative costs, district initiatives, which I'll talk about in just a second, and then focus school support. We do have 3 schools that are considered focus schools because of achievement gaps, so they are provided with some additional funds. You'll see that in the budget, and those schools are Winecoff, Wolf Meadow, and Weddington Hills. Okay, so then once those set-asides are completed, then the rest of the funds go out to the schools on a per-pupil allocation, and you can see that within the budget. So a couple of our district initiatives from this year that we have focused on quite a bit. One is parent involvement. You may have heard that we have opened 4 parent resource centers at our Title I schools, which are really places so parents and volunteers and students can gather to learn, to share information, to volunteer at the school site. So it's a physical space for those things to happen. And we're partnering with the Partnership for Children, the Cabarrus Health Alliance to provide immunization clinics and things there. We're looking at dental clinics, the Cabarrus Literacy Council to provide courses for parents, and also with the Upper Room. And so we have 4 schools, Royal Oaks, Weddington, Winecoff, and Wolf Meadow, who currently have those parent resource centers in place, and we'll be looking at expanding once we get those off the ground and the vision of those spaces has actually come to fruition. So that's one of the big district initiatives that's currently in place. The other one, this past summer, we had students at 5 of our middle schools for a week, the week of June 22nd. Students were there the 22nd through the end of that week, participating in a summer bridge program. So the students from all of our Title I schools had the opportunity to go to the middle school that they will be attending in the fall and participate in STEM activities. We used engineering as elementary, so they designed houses and had to focus on insulation, and then cities where they were trying to prevent water runoff. So the students, the main goal of that was really to acclimate them to their middle school and also to provide them with some interventions. And so we did set aside some funds for that, and I have some student comments. I want to read you a couple of them from that. So one, I learned how to use my time wisely. So we had counselors there who talked about, what happens when you go to middle school. I learned about different kinds of insulation and what they do. I learned that there's nothing to fear about middle school. So that's good. Now we have a child who will go and not be afraid. I learned about combo locks because I used to be stressed out about the locks, and now I can turn and open a lock. So they did these locker relays and things, which were really fun. So that's a big stressor, right, when you're going to middle school. So one of the Mount Pleasant teachers actually had the kids put their backpacks on, and they did relays, right? So they'd run to the locker, they'd undo the locker, they'd put their backpack in. It was great. So, there are those things that help ease that transition. I learned about engineering and how shipping containers are people's homes, so we did some of that tiny house stuff, and making house and designing. I learned to be confident, and I learned my way around the school. So you'll see in this year's budget, we've also done a set aside for this same program. All of the feedback we received from teachers and students and parents was really positive. So if you see that in the budget, that's what we're talking about, is that summer bridge program. So then once the funds are allocated to the schools, the schools have to develop a school-wide plan that align with these 10 components, right? So I'm not going to read these to you, but you can see that there are 10 kind of key things that go into what we use to create our school-wide Title I plan. So you see things like parent involvement, which I've already talked about, ongoing professional development, instruction by highly qualified staff. And so each of the Title I schools have to be provided with enough funds to be able to make those 10 things happen. So when you're looking at the allocations for schools, right, it's really important that we make sure we can't provide a school with $20,000 and expect them to be able to do these 10 school-wide components. So we want to be very cognizant of that when we're allocating funds. And then the final piece, once the schools have the funds, they work with their school improvement teams to determine how those funds are spent. So that is something that's in the Title I regulations that needs to be determined by parents and teachers and administrators who represent that school. So the majority of our Title I funds are typically used for people, right, just like any other budget. So we're hiring teachers, we're hiring contract tutors, we're hiring interventionists. Funds are also used for professional development. We try very hard to make sure that's embedded PD with some of the teachers who are in classrooms coaching other teachers who may need that, technology, and then supplies and materials. So once the funds go out to schools, that's how they're utilized. You have an executive summary that gives some additional details, and you have the budget, and I will take any questions that you might have at this time.
Board members, do you have any comments or questions for Dr. Natras? David?
I just wanted to ask about the 5% professional development. I take it that would be 5% of the 3.4
It's 5% of what's allocated to schools is what we recommend. There's actually not a specific set aside any longer. That was back when we were doing school choice and some of the other requirements several years ago. But there is not a requirement for the 5% unless we had schools that do not have highly qualified teachers, but all of our schools have highly qualified teachers. So this is our recommendation. Once it goes out to schools that they spend the 5%, they may or may not.
How is that professional development different than other professional development that the same teachers in the same grade range would participate in? How is the professional development for Title I different or somehow more effective?
So it's in addition to, right? So the whole premise of Title I is that it's in addition to. So we have our professional development that all teachers across the district receive, and this is on top of that. So an example of that would be we work with Greg Tang, who's brilliant in the work he does with math, and all of teachers in Cabarrus County have an opportunity to work with him. Title I teachers get an extra day. So we're trying to get him in to come in and do some modeling and things, but he works with them for an additional day so that it's on top of. Some of this is things like at A.T. Allen, for example, they do a conference on campus. So once every quarter, the teachers have substitutes. They come in, and their lead teachers provide coaching and support based on their individual data. Schools that are not Title I schools often don't have enough in their budget to do that as regularly and provide for that additional support. It may be professional development on culturally responsive pedagogy or working with students in poverty, right, because they have some specific needs. So those are some of the examples of the ways we use it.
And does that professional development somehow equate to certification or additional formal credentials for a teacher who has participated in that additional
Not usually.
Professional development?
Not usually. They
Or
get
formal
additional
recognition
CEUs,
of that.
Right. They get additional CEUs and things, but it's not often a certification of any kind on top of.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other comments? Dr. Phillips?
I had one. It's a nitpick, but I'm impressed. It's good. I like it. But on page 3 of the actual report that I
Yep.
think we're supposed to approve, I think there's a typo. It says projected activities and priorities for
There is.
2014,
You're right.
15.
You're
It
right.
should be 15,
Yes,
16.
it should be.
All right. So
We'll
with that,
change that.
with that change,
Okay.
I move that we accept, approve
Yes.
the Title I plan as presented.
All right, I have a motion. Do I have a second to that motion?
Second.
All right, Mr. Seconded that motion. Any more discussion? I have some discussion. Well, Dr. Phillips cut me off. I mean,
Yes.
I'll turn it back on now. Yeah, it's a goat roping, and I'm the goat. There were a couple things that you noted. One was the focus school support, and you noted 3 schools. I think it was Winecoff, Weddington Hills,
And Wolf Meadow.
Wolf Meadow. How do you know, Jason sent us out some reports on growth. Were those in those growth reports that we could actually look at and see because you said it was a matter of achievement level and gaps between the highest achieving and lowest achieving groups? How do we know, how do we see what that looks like, and or is there something that you could send to us later on so we can kind of see what does that mean? Because, obviously we don't.
Those designations were determined by the state 2 years ago when we received the flexibility waiver from ESEA. So the state actually determined the focus schools based on whether or not we had achievement gaps in terms of proficiency. So this is a proficiency, not a growth measure. So proficiency in which our lowest performing group and our highest performing group had a greater gap than the state average. So each of those schools had a different gap. So Weddington, it's with the limited English proficient students and our English speaking students. So they're working very hard on closing the gap with that subgroup of students. With Wolf Meadow, it was our exceptional children and our students who are not exceptional children. And so each school kind of had a different achievement gap that we are looking to close. So those additional funds are used primarily for coaches to go into classrooms and help support that work, particularly with those groups of students.
Could you just send us some information on
Sure.
that so we could understand? Because,
Sure.
obviously Royal Oaks has a very high, but it wasn't in that group, and then there are several others that were interspersed that weren't in the same grouping.
Right.
My next question is, on the detailed matrix that you had about the allocations of money, you had 2 schools that were called CEPs. Can you just tell us what that acronym stands for?
So CEP means Community Eligibility Provision. So last year was the first year where we are offering all students free breakfast and lunch, and that is part of the child nutrition side of things, where we can provide direct certification for families to receive breakfast and lunch based on the population within that area who access other services. So it may be things like they're TANF eligible, they receive food stamps, they are homeless, so when there's a particular percentage of students within that community, then they qualify for universal free breakfast and lunch programs. And so those 2 schools, because they have free breakfast and lunch, we can no longer qualify them based on their free and reduced lunch status because we're no longer collecting applications every day. So we use that community percentage to determine what their poverty rate is to allocate their funds.
And how do we assure that we're tracking all those that are involved with the program? Because obviously you're not getting applications anymore. So we have a different automated method that we use with DSS, I assume.
That's right, and that feeds into child nutrition. And Frank gets a report, so we use his numbers from April, and he gives us the report with the percentages for the community, because when we do these allocations, we actually pull a one-time number. So we pull it for them from April, and then he'll have an updated list next April to do that. And so instead of relying on those applications, we rely on those community numbers.
So is there something that the parents have to do, or the principals have to encourage the parents to do when the next school year begins?
Not to get those numbers.
Okay.
You can explain more. Yep.
Yeah, and that's the whole point, Mr. Shoemaker, is that what they want to do is make it easier for these families. There's so many issues that they're facing, and just one more set of papers to have to be completed when they're already in the system. That's the reason this program's in place.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I have one more question, and then we'll vote on this. Inquiring minds want to know. Concord Middle School. obviously they are somewhere up there in the number of free and reduced, and what's that percentage right now?
So right now, Concord Middle is sitting at about 74%. So
And so next year, you think that they could possibly be into the Title I by proxy?
we anticipate that they will hit that 75% this year, yes.
And what will that, how will that redistribute the dollars of this program for us?
Well, we'll have a couple of different options. Once a school hits 75%, we can either provide comparable funding from local and state dollars, right? So they would get X amount of Title I funds. We could decide that in place of that, we'll provide local and state dollars. If we decide to go ahead and fund them as a Title I school, then it will drop on average about 15% from the budgets of the other Title I schools. So, I mean, we'll see every year our allocation changes just a little bit, so we'll see where that falls next year, but we're keeping a very close eye on it to try to mitigate the impact on the other Title I schools.
So we have two options. Is one, the federal dollars would stay pretty much the same because they're per capita.
That's right.
But that would mean we would either have to ask the county for more assistance and the state for more assistance, right?
Yes, or provide them with the Title I funds and know that that's going to reduce some of the funding at the current elementary
Right,
schools.
just go with less dollars.
That's right.
Okay. All right, board members, we have a motion by Dr. Phillips and Mr. Furr. All in favor of this motion, say aye. Aye. Oppose? Motion carries 5-0. Mr. Furr, I'm so sorry I dragged this one out, but technology lease. Dr. Probst.
Good evening. I'd like to first tell or thank the commissioners for giving us, allocating an additional $1 million to our annual lease. This is the first time since 2002 we've had an increase, and I have to say it is quite a pleasure to be in this position right now. We obviously have an issue of needing devices in the system. We're moving to online testing. We were asked by the state how many online tests we wanted, and we said, bring them, and we'll take as many as we can go. They're coming anyway. We'd rather be ahead of the game, ahead of this situation with the online testing. In addition, we've bought into the state's online learning management system called Canvas, which means that all of our students will be able to take courses as well as communicate and put course content for any subject online on a computer. We've also moved to Office 365. I will say we're the second district in the state to do that, and I don't know if you all are well aware, but it might be mandated that all districts move in that direction, and certainly having devices will help us with that with our students. When looking at the lease and using the money from the other lease, our annual payment was $1,186.34.03. And at that time, looking at it, we had the decision of whether to go with the 3150s, which if you're on the tech committee, know that was the decision we made back in January. But in looking at the number of devices that we needed, we decided to go with the Chromebooks for this year at a cost of $316.41 a unit. That gives us 9,123 devices and 304 carts. And the reason that I'm bringing it to you tonight is because we would like to get these ordered and have these here as soon as possible for the opening of school. And at this time, I'll take any of your questions.
All right, Mr. Walter, I see you'd like to.
How close does that get us to the one-to-one that we're?
Mr. Walter, it does not get us, it gets us closer, obviously. In terms of having a device actually in the student's hands, excluding labs, it gets us at the high schools close to a 1.3. And then if we get to the middle school, a 1.4, and the elementary is about a 1.5, 1.6. And right now we're at a 1.22. So we're getting there. Another year, if the commissioners fund it, and we'll be there. I will tell you that we're going to do things differently than some districts have done across the state. We are not going to be sending these devices home. When you send the device home, there's a lot of wear and tear in the book bags, plus the studies have shown that they're not genuinely used at home. Students will use devices of their own at home, and the average repair is about 25% of your entire inventory. That's a lot. So we've studied this with other districts, and we are going to choose to do the carts. Next year, our concept is that we have one cart that 2 teachers would share. Hopefully, within the following year, then each teacher would have a cart. I know that many of you are concerned about these Title I students that might be in high schools and need a device at home, and we will work with them individually to help them secure a device and take it home. But we'll do those on individual basis.
Mr. Harrison?
I noticed that the sales tax is 7%, and for some reason I'm thinking 7.5% is a normal sales tax. Is the sales tax appropriately 7% for this purchase for an educational purpose?
It was estimated, but we've changed the 0.5%.
Okay. So it would be, that figure is correct, though?
No, it used to be 7.5%.
It should be 7.5%?
We've used them over the years, and that.
But the good news is,
Yes?
if I didn't get the sales tax right, certainly our interest rate was 1.9%.
Right.
Great.
And kudos to you for negotiating that as well. And it's been a rough, you said, since 2002, that we've been able to work with the county productively to...
I'm just very...
or this well, at least.
Very thankful for Dr. Louder and Ms. Klutz and all their work with the commissioners this spring.
And big congratulations to you and many thanks to the county commissioners for trusting us with those funds as well for this purpose.
Dr. Phillips?
Yeah, at the risk of earning the nickname my children have given me of Sir Gripes a lot, I just want to talk about this sales tax. It is, and it's not, no, I'm not talking about how much it is. It's just, to me, it is just a ridiculous situation that when a public school funded by taxes buys computers, that we have to pay a sales tax to the state, and now I'm going to channel Ronald Reagan, and after an expensive night on the town in Raleigh, that money gets sent back to us to fund our school system. That is just absurd. That is bureaucracy run amok.
That's only a portion of that comes back to us.
Only 4% goes back to the state.
2%, 2.5% comes to us, 4% goes.
2.5% goes back to the county, which gave us the money in the first place to buy the taxes. So, all right, so a less expensive night on the town in Concord for some of the money. Okay.
And to reiterate his point, that's 245 additional items that we could have purchased with that. Not talking about the mobile computing cart. Could have maybe picked up a couple of those too, but
It's
the sad thing is that
80,000.
as a result of this, we're being denied 243 items that computers that we could have had that a charter school will get if they had the same $77,591. They would have been able to buy those 245 because they would have gotten all of their sales tax money back. And now, is there some method created that we could find a way to save this 77,000 and get it in another way and use a different governmental entity to help us out?
I'll defer to the CFO.
So we have used those creative methods in the past to do that. The reason it's not as lucrative or as well assessed for these computers is because the county needs to hold the title of the property in which. So for construction purposes, we can transfer the title of a Mount Pleasant or Royal Oaks or whatever that is, and we can get the full return. So if we were to do this, we have to transfer all of our titles to the county to make that happen. And certainly, we could do that, but it's a kind of a laborious process to do.
When you say all of the titles, what does that mean?
All of the titles of our properties.
Our
so-
computer properties.
Right. So there's properties that are in our name because there's no debt attached to it. I think there's about half and half. Probably they have more than we do because there's a lot of debt attached to those properties. But the ones that are free and clear, we have the title to those or the ownership to those. But for this to happen, the county has to have ownership of all of those properties.
So do you mean, I'm sorry, do you mean by property, do you mean licenses?
The deed to the property.
Okay.
And so we have a 3-year lease, of which we're being assessed 7% on. So if we were to transfer the property over to the county for the 3 years during the lease, then at the end of the 3 years, we could have an agreement with the county that they would then transfer the property back to us at some marginal rate. Could we do something like that?
It's a rolling lease. So we would constantly, the idea of the way this is set up is we would always, always, always have a lease in force. And so you would never transfer the property back.
But once you paid these off, I thought that we would own these at the end. If this was a lease, and it was a lease-buy agreement. So at the end, these 9,123 units, at the end of 3 years, from some marginal, they would just be ours because Chrome wouldn't want them back.
Right. But you're going to use the new money that's freed up from that lease that you just paid off to buy more.
Well, that's true, but we would then own the 9,123 that came off the lease, and then there would be another 9,123 that, or whatever,
Right.
would be on a new lease and new property that would be transferred, right?
But these are being distributed system-wide.
That's right.
So there's really no reason to transfer title and transfer it back. You can transfer 100% of them, or you can keep what you have, but there's no advantage of going back and forth like that.
Oh, okay. Well, I thought that it was a control issue, and that's why I was trying
No, it's
to
not a control.
investigate that possibility.
No, I'm sure the county would allow us to transfer everything and them pay everything, all of our $50 million through them. But I'm sure they don't want to pay our payroll. They don't want to do our instructional supply. They don't want to, we're a different operating entity.
Right, I understand.
Maybe we should add
Just
this,
looking for an option.
add it to our legislative agenda.
Well, it
Something.
was. But it was ignored as usual as all our legislative agenda
I have
items.
one other thing.
We got no traction.
One other thing, just changing the topic a little bit, I'm asking our new teacher liaison, can you kind of share with us what you use the technology like this for in your classroom? If that's
I am in an ELA classroom, but in our math classrooms, obviously we have the program Alex that we've adopted, and each class is expected to spend so much time using those on the Alex program, and obviously we need to provide that time for our students. In addition, testing is a large portion of what our technology is used for, unfortunately. With the more technology that we have, the testing window will not have to be as wide, so that they will then be freed up for more.
so in your classroom, it's primarily testing, is that what the?
No, the primary purpose is definitely not testing, no. The primary purpose is obviously instructional, but they are needed for testing. But no, it's not the primary purpose at all.
Okay, sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
No, you're fine.
And I think Ms. Baumgartner will be happy because last year, most of the devices we had in the schools, exactly the math teachers, I don't want to say they hogged them, they had no choice, but they were basically being used by the math teachers, and the ELA teachers and social study teachers were scrambling for devices, signing up for labs that maybe they could get to once every 2 weeks. With this, I think Northwest Middle is predicted to maybe get 9 or 10 Chrome carts, which that is going to allow those teachers to be able to have access to the technology for their students. So this is a win.
So when the technology committee agreed to the other Dell Is this a Dell component? This is a
This
Dell
is,
Chrome.
we are staying standardized, at being a Dell shop, we're doing the Dell Chrome. I will tell you that the decision on not moving to the 3150 was purely financial and purely volume. In order to get the number of computers that we needed to relieve the stress on some of the C&I initiatives that locked down the computers like Alex, as well as the state testing, we had to go the route of going with the Chrome. I will also tell you that it's the mechanism, the device that I think the state's pushing. The state just got rid of the testing browser for the PCs and the apps, and now you will actually access all testing through the Chrome browser. So we're having to add that, load that onto the Macs and PCs we have. But if you think about it from a state perspective, it's a pretty inexpensive device that will allow you to get out to the web and access a lot of these programs.
Okay. All right. Board members looking for a motion. Well, not everybody at once. David Harrison.
Second.
Rob Walter. All right, any more discussion? Any more questions? All in favor of this lease as proposed? Say aye. Aye. Oppose? That motion carries, Ms. Monroe, 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Tim Louder, come on and talk to us about the change order from Mount Pleasant Middle School.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. Tonight we are working in anticipation of the county closing on the properties for Mount Pleasant Middle School. And so in doing so, we have gathered our scope together, what would be necessary to relocate the school to the adjacent properties next to the high school. And we will actually add infrastructure, site development. We will actually mirror the school itself and then add locker room facilities because we do now have athletic facilities at this new school. And we worked with Morrisburg Architecture, and they presented us a price of $225,000 for the redesign and site adaptation for that design on this site. We have already presented this to the county commission. They are aware of it, and they will probably approve it next Monday night. But you will be approving it tonight, pending, obviously, their approval next Monday night. How about that?
Board members, do I have any questions on this?
Just to,
Dr. Phillips?
just to verify, so last month when we made the decision to move the sites and you went down and showed the costs of staying at the existing site versus moving to the new site, and I think it was, it might have been a little bit more to go to the new site.
Yes, sir.
This $225,000 was already included in your presentation. When you presented the cost to us, that included this additional money to redesign the site?
Actually, we put in about $195,000 in
Okay.
the original thing, but then we've actually since then decided we needed to mirror the school, and so that additional cost kind of came in there. But
Okay.
we made sure that the county was aware of those additional costs.
Okay, but it really doesn't, it doesn't change the
It doesn't change the school at all, it
the
just
math.
mirrors it where
Well,
the
I would say it really
that
doesn't
side.
change the math in terms of, all right, maybe it's, instead of
We're so far already in the preliminary of
100,000,
the
it's
total design
120,000,
and
yeah.
construction,
Yeah.
plus or minus 20,000 really does
So the
matter.
extra 20,000 was to mirror the school, is that what you're?
Yes, sir.
Any more questions on this? If you did notice, there was a schedule
Yes.
inside this, and we shouldn't have any problem meeting this schedule or whatever your,
Not to put Mr. Todd Berg on the spot, but yes, he's give us all his assurance. He put all the power he has in his company behind it to help us meet our schedule. How about that?
okay.
Good enough?
So we will have a bid in hand sometime at the end of the year,
Yes, sir. That's our intent.
all right? And we'll be deciding on it sometime around January.
Well, we have to go to the Board of Commissions for their, to take to the local government commission for them to get their approval for financing. Then we will probably
Right, but I
award.
mean, us as a board will probably
Yes.
have to make a decision by
Yes, sir.
January. Okay. All right. Do I have a motion on this?
So construction on the school would start when?
Probably March 1st.
Breaking ground in March.
Yes, sir. Based on the existing schedule for funding. We December 15th, we take bids, present it to county commission. County commission takes it to the LGC on January 15th, and then once that funding is done, they sell the bonds, and we have money available to us on March 1st.
Okay.
That's the present schedule.
All right, I need a motion. Mr. Furr, Mr. Harrison, all in favor? Oh, yeah, any more discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. All right, no more discussion. No, there were no votes. I did. I say no, there were no votes. Okay. 5-0, Ms. Monroe. All right, 12.7, it's the approval of the change order for Odell Elementary. Mr. Louder, you're bringing good tidings and brand-new information.
Well, this is part of a change order. You may recall that they had $839,000 additional funds allocated at the beginning of the Odell School project for things that had to be done on the site, like storm drainage, curb and guttering, some improvements to utilities on site, and that money was put there. This is $149,000 of that allocation for the portion that has been done to date. And so we're asking to be approved to date, or being asked to be approved to date. They will be coming back later once we have the final alignment of the rear entrance road and that sort of thing for the rest of the allocation of the funds. But at this point in time, this is the change order for the portion that has been designed and actually trying to enter the contract as we speak. And we can start on. Okay.
All right, I open this up to members. Anyone want to have anything to say on this? Mr. Walter?
So the 839,500, that's still anticipated to be spent?
We anticipate most of that being spent, yes, but this is 149,000 of that.
Right, but you're still anticipating
Yes,
the
sir.
rest?
The other portion of the road will be obviously the roadway and the connection into Highway 73, which is still yet to be determined because based on our permit from NCDOT.
So are we comfortable with the 839,500?
Right now, it looks like that would be a pretty good number.
Okay.
Dr. Phillips?
When do you expect to have the rest of this, the Phase 2, ready for?
We would really like to have it
approval?
right now, but we are still kind of waiting on the NCDOT to give us our final approval, whether it's 1,200 or 1,400 feet from the intersection of 73 and Odell School Road. Once we have that back in our hands, then we can finalize that design and bring it back to us probably within 30 to 45 days after the decision from NCDOT. But at this point in time, without the design, we can't get a firm price from the contractor.
Now, at what point does it start to cause a schedule issue? When do we need to have?
I'd say we're probably within the next 90 days we need to be
working on that.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And they're aware of our preference. We
They
have a
certainly
preference,
are.
which is the 1,500-foot one,
No,
I
we want the
believe,
12,
that
yeah, we
has
want
the
it close as we can
stoplight
get.
and,
Yes, sir. We want 1,200 feet.
okay. All right, board members, I need a motion to approve this change order.
I'll make the motion to approve.
Second it.
Mr. Walter, Dr. Phillips, any more discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye. Aye. That motion does carry 5-0.
Thank you.
And guess what? We've reached the end. I'll need a motion to convene in closed session. And that is closed session pursuant to General Statute 143-318.11A3, consult with an attorney, employed or retained by the public body, etc. General Statute 143-318.11A6 to consider qualifications, competence, performance, character, fitness, etc. And pursuant to General Statute 115C-319 through 321. I need a motion to go in closed session.
So moved.
Dr. Phillips, Mr. Harrison. All in favor, say aye. Aye. I didn't hear everybody.
Aye.
Okay. All right. We are now in closed session. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.